Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia and this is the summary for the day of 1073 for the 31st of January 2025. Yeah. So of course we are already deep into February the 1st. So there is the latest frontline changes in this report, but there won't be the summary reports, the SITREPs from the various defense ministries. So just before I start, I also want to note that because it was a Friday yesterday, so there was no the Russians did not do a daily report for yesterday except for Kursk front. They also only do a weekly update. So there will not be the Russian Defense Ministry's announcements around here in terms of the fightings, except for one particular one which the Russian Defense Ministry announced the capture of Krimsky over at the Torex front, but we'll get there. So we're going to start off from the southern flank, over at the Kherson front. So the Ukrainian Defense Ministry announced they have repelled one attack over in the Dnipro direction, which as usual by tradition we're just going to put it around the pre-Dniprovsky direction. So but that's about it. We do not have any other reports because the Russians did not do their daily report. Over in Zaporizhia, in the Zaporizhia front, we have one fighting report over at Novodanilivka over here. The Russians, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, announced that the Russians have attacked into Novodanilivka. So there is this attack being reported, but this is pretty common. We have the reports of the fighting very often 27, 24, 18, 16, 64. So this looks like yet another sporadic attack from the Russian forces along this entire front line over in the Orikhiv sector. So I don't think there's something to be concerned about. We move on to the Velika Novosilka front. Over the Velika Novosilka front, we have fighting reported at Novopil, Rivnopil, Novosilka, and Rozdone. Novopil is by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. The one at Rivnopil and Novosilka is mainly by by Deep State UA, the pro-Ukrainian source. Although the Ukrainian Defense Ministry did mention about Novosilka, the main thing is because of the frontline change around here. Ukrainian mapping have mapped that the Russian forces have advanced in this area, particularly mainly that the Russians are going down the gully as well as capturing the tree lines around here, moving in the direction of Novosilka. The front line now is merely around 2.6 kilometers away from Novosilka. And as I zoom out, you can see the strategic situation better. Russian forces attacking in this direction. So this is a continuation from the Velika Novosilka area, the Battle of Velika Novosilka, as the Russians continue to try to retake all the grounds that they have lost prior to the 2023 counter-offensive by the Ukrainian forces. So the other side, we have the fighting reported Rozdone by Deep State UA and Ukrainian Defense Ministry, and particularly there is some major frontline changes mapped by the Ukrainian side as the Russian forces straighten the front line along the highway on the western part of Rozdone. So this mainly the frontline change in this sector as the Russians is starting to close the gap towards the Mokriali River. And so this is I think the days of Novi Koma being Ukrainian is going to end pretty soon at this rate. However, it's important to note there is a bridge towards Novo Chertuvate, so I believe that the Ukrainians will definitely want to do their best to defend this area here. So moving on away from the Velika Novosilka front, we go into the Andriivka front. This is the Andriivka front. This is Andriivka, and over this area, there's a lot of very strategically important settlements, particularly at Constantinople. And so Russian forces are attacking over at Constantinople, Ulakli, on the north of Sukhiyali and Yantarne, Dashne, Shevchenko, Petropavlivka, Andriivka, and towards Oleksievka. So geolocation of Ukrainian forces, they have tanks and pontoon crossings getting hit. So there's a leopard one at Constantinople, and there's a pontoon crossing getting destroyed. So because the main bridge is already destroyed by the Russian Air Force, at least since the 9th of January. So the Ukrainians are putting up all the bridges to try to make sure that they can either resupply or actually retreat. And but yeah, the Russians have struck it again. So that's what it is. So in the south, in this area here, the Russian forces in the north of Sukiali and Yantaryny continue to advance to capture more grounds along the Gali region north of Yantaryny and Sukiali. This is a pretty common, expectable thing, because the Russians, while they are actually putting pressure in the Battle of Dashny, they are trying to squeeze the Ukrainians out towards Ulakli. So this is a current ongoing thing, and the Russians are probably also making their moves towards Ulakli, at least conducting fire attacks on the Ukrainians in this village or town. So on the north, in case you do not know, that the Ukrainians cannot cross the river along the Voschar River. So this is the only way out. This is the only way out for the Ukrainians. There's another river in the south. It's called the Sukiali River. So I should use another color. Sukiali River. So the Ukrainians are pretty much stuck in this area, just in case you do not know. And over in the Petropavlivka, Shevchenko region, Russian forces continue to make advance as this impossible salient or pocket that the Ukrainians have claimed to still have presence continue to close down. So based on DPA's position, as I mentioned, this is unlikely to be real. I don't think there's any Ukrainian positions in this area here. The Russian mapping should be correct. So other than that, that's mainly the gist of the Andreevka front. Moving into the Pokrov front, this is Pokrov, and this is the Pokrov front, and this is the southern flank. Consider this is southern flank. Over the southern flank, we have fighting reported at Novoandreevka as well as towards Kotlyarivka. The Russian Defense Ministry yesterday has already announced the capture of Novoandreevka. So this is something in case you do not know. And that's all from the southern flank. In the Pokrov sector, the Russian forces attacked and at Udashny, it was counterattacked by the Ukrainians. So there is still some very active clashes over in Udashny. Now, the number of reports around this sector is much lesser because the Russian Defense Ministry did not report. Usually, the reports are very heavy by the Russian side on this front. Geolocation of FPV drone hitting an armored vehicle by the Russians on the Ukrainian vehicle was noted on the west of Pokrov. Over in the Minohrad sector, Minohrad is here, and the Russians attacked over towards Pokrov, towards Novoukranka, Lysivka, as well as Promin. So that's pretty much the gist of it. No strategic changes around here. The fighting is all reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry as usual, because there's no Russian Defense Ministry reported. So and we move on over to the northern flank. At the northern flank, fighting is reported at Myrolyubivka, Novotoretsk, Yelizavetivka, and Baranivka. So fighting is reported all by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, except Baranivka is by the Ukrainian mapping, Deep State UA. The main thing is that they have mapped that the Russians have straightened the front line along Baranivka, as the Russians is now on the verge of full capture of Baranivka. I think there's still a little bit of Baranivka here, if I'm not wrong. I mean, personally, I can't really tell much. I mean, there's nothing about here. Maybe there's some stuff here which doesn't look like anything. And then there's the Batman's house around here. So that's all for this area here. We move into the Torex front. At the Torex front, we have in 2 days, so which is not in this report, but in today's Russian situation report or daily summary, they have announced the capture of Krimsky. So Russian forces continue to be fighting at Krimsky, Torex, and Skrebenivka, with the report coming from Ryber, the pro-Russian source. And the Ukrainian Defense Ministry only mentioned about Torex. So according to the Russian mapping, they have claimed that based on this geolocation that we have reported yesterday, the Russian forces has, according to the Russian mapping, taken everything around Nelipivka all the way to Shcherbinivka, or with the straightened front line moving towards Petrivka or Novopassky over here. So this is the Russian mapping, it's a Russian claim. is not validated by the Ukrainian side, but this also means that the parallel universe is actually expanding. So there's something to note of. Over on the Torex region, Krymsky, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, has fully captured this, but we do not have the mapping to back it up. The Russian mapping by Ryba only mapped it to this point. So there must be some advancement that is not unreported yet. So there's still a little bit of Krymsky left, which is not surprising that if the Russians have taken the whole thing. The Russians are also currently still attacking the mine around here. And they call it a mine. A mine. If you get the reference, you are a legend. So that's about it over in Torex. If Krymsky is really captured, then I think Torex is a matter of time, very, very close. So that's all from the Torex front. We move into the Bakhmut front, and in the southern flank of the Bakhmut front, fighting is being reported at Bilohora, Peteshny, as well as Stuposhki. Over at Stuposhki, there is a geolocation that shows the Russian forces making huge advance through the forest, and they have retaken this forest that was previously lost to the Ukrainians, because previously the Ukrainians actually reached the canal here, which caused the mapping to change to show that the Ukrainians have taken all of this forest. But with this, everything is now invalidated, with the Russians retaking the entire forest, and now they are back to this close front line of around 1.5 kilometers to Stuposhki. So the fighting report are all by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, by the way. So over in the northern flank, we have nothing over the north except for Chasiv, where the Russians are still reportedly attacking Chasiv, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry and Ryba, the pro-Russian source. There is a geolocation of Russian forces fighting in the direction of Mykolaiv in the southern part of Chasiv, and this marks the continuation of the collapsing front line for the Ukrainian side in this in Chasiv, basically. And there is not a lot of Chasiv left. More than half of Chasiv has been taken by the Russian forces, so this is a pretty bad situation for the Ukrainians. But don't worry, Ukrainians have a lot of defense lines in the rear positions, and there's one massive Bakhmut over here, which is not called Konstantinivka. So Konstantinivka is like a bigger version of Bakhmut. So I think that it's still a long way to go for the Russians to take this entire region. We move into the Siversk front. At the Siversk front, we have fighting being reported at Bilohorivka, Bakhmut-Kayamsky, and Spurny. The fighting, all these fighting are being reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, but that's all. The interesting thing is that the Russians have already entered into Bakhmut-Kayamsky, and the reports of fighting at Spurny does suggest that the Russians are making some move in the south of Bakhmut-Kayamsky, and the Russians have already taken positions on the eastern part of it. So we are probably looking at the Russians trying to make a move for Novoselivka as well. So let's see. This is a very difficult front. There is not a lot of place to hide. The fields are very, very gigantic. So yeah, it's not like some of the fields in other places where the the tree line to tree line is much closer. This is all very far apart. So it's very difficult to transverse through all these places. Over in the Liman front. At the Liman front, fighting is reported at Zelena Dolena, Koloziazi, as well as Yampolivka. But that's about it. We do have no more intel regarding this sector in the Liman front. Moving further up north into the Makiivka front, we have, let me see, this is Pavlova. Okay. In the Makiivka region, we have fighting reported at Makiivka as well as towards Novo-Mikhailivka. This is reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, which means that the Russians previously, as I mentioned, has been trying to go for Kharkivka. Now there is this report about fighting towards Novo-Mikhailivka might suggest that the Russians have turned around and attacked southwest. So, but that's about it, So the last time the Novo-Mikhailivka was mentioned was the 13th. So no, this is not a very common direction for the Russians to attack. So let's just wait and see how this play out. Over in the Borova front, we have fighting reported at Novoyekhovka, Lozova, Zarizove, and Bohoslavka. So that's about it. Without the Russian Defense Ministry's report, it looks very shallow. So everything is by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. So these are all Ukrainians military reports. So that's about it. It seems like if you based on the Ukrainians, the main push seems to be from here, moving in the direction of Borova. So that's all. We move further up north to the Kupiansk front. At the Kupiansk front, we have fighting reported at Petropavlivka and Pischani. Reports coming from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. Nothing's particularly special about these reports. Over in the Voreshna front, the Voreshna front, there is some massive updates. So the main thing is the Russian mapping, Ryba have shown the mapping for the Voreshna front, and this marks the some major developments, including the mapping confirmed or acknowledged the Russian Defense Ministry report of the capture of Kalinove. They have closed the front line between Voreshna and Zapatny to a more logical front line. But they did not, however, acknowledge that the Russians have captured Zapatny. The main reason for this entire report was because of Novomlinsk, because suddenly the Russians have now captured Novomlinsk, and this is actually confirmed by the Ukrainians themselves. The Ukrainians are the one that actually prompted this report. The Russians actually did not know about this. The pro-Russian side, Ryba, did not know of this. They saw it from Deep State UA, and then they got surprised themselves. So let's zoom in a bit. Over at Kalinove, Russian forces basically taken the position up to Kalinove and taken some northern positions, which explain how they managed to attack Kindrashivka a few days ago on the 28th. The entire forest west of Sinsivka is now also mapped by the Russians as fully captured, all towards the Oskil River. So there is this river over here. So the Russians have taken all the positions to basically the river of Holubivka. So this is a pretty significant. These are just claimed, though this is not confirmed capture. So this will only affect the Russian mapping. So for those that may be new to DPA, DPA's mapping, there's two maps. It's not one map. This is not one map. This is actually two maps. The blue is the Ukrainian mapping. The pink is the Russian mapping. So there's actually two different maps. So just in case you don't know, over in Voreshna itself, the Russian forces have confirmed or not confirmed, but the Russians have claimed that they have full control of the rest of the forest, which makes perfect sense, and as well as expanding a bit of the control on the southwest of Voreshna. So, and they have full control of the entire highway. So that's all from this area. The Russian forces have been geolocated northeast of Voreshna, confirming that they have advanced northeast, or north of Voreshna. However, it's important to note that the Russian Defense Ministry has already announced the capture of Voreshna on the 27th. So we definitely is still missing some mapping or some intel regarding the Voreshna situation. Over at Novomlinsk, this is where the drama is. The Ukrainian mapping suddenly, Deep State UAs have suddenly announced this out of nowhere. They say that the Russians have again took control of Novomlinsk, and this is true because the Russians have previously captured Novomlinsk once. Somehow I don't have this mapping, the note here. So they say that this happened a few weeks ago in early December. So that's what it is. So which is very disturbing. I think the rest of the situations is just pointless to read. It's just them ranting. There is geolocation of Russian forces, in this hills or mountainous region, or hilly region, or maybe cliffy region. I can't tell from this angle unless I use a Google map. So, but this means that the Russian forces basically have taken the entirety of Novomlinsk. So this is the Ukrainian mapping. They have mapped that the Russians have captured all of this area here. This is Ukrainian mapping. The Russian claims that the line is actually here with the full control of all the forests between Voreshna and Novomlinsk. So this is actually pretty significant, which means that the entire area of the Russians capturing of the bridgehead along the Oskil River is now getting rather massive. This is a pretty big bridgehead for the Russians. I think very soon we'll probably see some major offensive pushing outwards. But how fast do the Russians really want to push, it remains to be anyone's guess. Along the highway of Voreshna, there is a Humvee hitting a minefield and exploded, which is kind of weird. I mean, they hit a minefield in Ukrainian territory. Yeah. So, yeah, someone has not been reporting where the minefields are to their colleagues. So that's all from the Voreshna front. We move into the Kharkiv front. At the Kharkiv front, we have fighting reported at Voshchansk, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, but that's about it. There's nothing else over in the Kharkiv front. We move on to the Kursk front or the Kursk front. Over at the Kursk front, the strategic situation remains largely the same. Over in the southern flank, we have fighting reported over at Kurilovka and Guevo. So nothing particularly new regarding here, except that there was a armored personnel carrier getting destroyed by the FPV drone of the Russians. So so that's about it. The video was did on a pretty nice road. And I actually zoom in and actually the road is actually pretty nice, like real for real. Like it's actually a pretty nice road. So yeah, because I'm so used to Ukraine roads, I was kind of surprised that this kind of lines, like I thought this would be dirt roads because in Ukraine this kind of lines are dirt roads. But I'm surprised to see actually there was marking on the road. So kind of surprised. Like, I thought it's going to be like this, this not dirt road. So yeah, so the map, the Google Maps, you need to improve. This is a pretty major road, I guess. So anyway, over at the Sudzha region, we have fighting reported over at Makhnovka, Zamoste, Goncharovka, Mirny, Shalin at Rubenskine, as well as Gogolevka, as well as Kazacha Loknia. So let me push out a bit. So this is the situation at Sudzha. Fighting is being reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. The reason there is Russian Defense Ministry report is because Kursk front report is always separate. Because the situation in Kursk is not entirely a special military operation. So that's why it's a separate thing. The fighting in Ukraine is special military operation. The fighting at Kursk is just them fighting away Ukrainian what's the word they use? Militia? Terrorists? I can't remember what they say, what they use to call the Ukrainians. But yeah, they basically see this as an entirely different mission. Although the server group of forces do operate inside the special military operation as well. But yeah, it is technically to the Russians, this is a different operation. So this is a defense of the homeland, and the other one is actually to punish Ukraine. So basically that's the situation. The Ukrainians do not report on the Kursk front. They simply said how many fighting was reported, similar to their Kherson front reports, which is very general. So nothing really to talk about. Over in the northern flank, we have no more fighting at Cherkasskoye Porozhnoye. There's no reports around here. The report is mainly over at Novaya Shorokina, Malaya Loknia, Nikolaevka, as well as Nikoisky. So mainly the same situation around here, which means the Ukrainians have built up a pretty strong defense along here where the Russians cannot break. So this is something important to note. And moving to the western flank, we have fighting reported over at Sverdiklovo as well as Lebedevka. What is new is actually this fighting towards Yuzhny. So the Nikoisky, as already mentioned just now, Yuzhny is being mentioned for the first time in a long time to be attacked by the Russians since the 20th, and before that, much earlier. So we haven't seen this report of Yuzhny for a long time, generally speaking. So I wonder, what's happening, and is Loknia taken by the Russians? Why is this happening? Some very confusing situation. And it's also important to note that if the Russians really successfully take any grounds around Yuzhny, the entire road here will not be usable by the Ukrainians. So there's this major road this major road leading up, and I think this is another road, right? No, this is a roadway. So there's this major road leading all the way up. They use another color, leading all the way up to Malaya Lognia, where the Ukrainians can use to reinforce their lines, and thus Yuzhny is that important. So if the Russians able to have some kind of a position around here, then that will cut off the road. That will mark the beginning of the end of the northern flank. So this is something to note about the situation report, the situation over in this Kursk front. Also, and some geolocations around here, other than that, was mentioned. In Myropilya, the Russians dropped a massive bomb on the command center or command post of the Ukrainian armed forces, allegedly. And over at Pisarevka, there was some drone strike. Some FPV drone strike. So this drone strike is pretty far away. It's around 10 kilometers away from the Russian position. So yeah, quite scary. To be honest, FPV drone flying 10 kilometers to come and kill you. So anyway, that's it. So this is the summary for the day of 1073 for the 31st of January. You may notice that the audio might sound a bit different, maybe. I'm not sure is it different, but I did some what's that called? Equalization. I did some adjustment, so maybe the audio sounds better, maybe not. I'm not sure. So let me know what you think in the comments, and also I dropped the frontline changes report if you want to watch it. But yeah, true alphas watch SIP reps. So just to say, and that's it. I'll see you guys in the next update.